Welcome to Comic Books and You. Today we are going to go over Peacemaker Tries Hard, Book 5. When we started this about 5 months ago, I had no idea we'd be actually looking at what is probably the best comic in mainstream at the moment. Honestly, maybe there's something from Marvel that's better, but I doubt it since it's Marvel and Disney. And on the DC side, there's some decent gems in the rough here and there. City Boy is another example of an half-decent comic. Current Green Lantern run is okay. The current Shazam run is okay. I don't like where it's going, but it could be cool. There's a few things in the rough out there, but this one here is a great comic at just about any points and into any type of genre and situation. And this particular book is moving us in an even better direction and potentially opening doors to the future. I doubt they'll stay open, but this is where we're going. Peacemaker and Red Bee work really well together as a duo of a world-weary man with a positive outlook on life and a completely oblivious man who also has a positive outlook on life in a way. So it's a very nice combination of character that they're using here, and it works really well as a grandfather figure for Peacemaker. I was going to say father figure, but Richard's a bit too old for that. I mean, Chris didn't really have a father, probably didn't really know his grandfather either. This is a fun thing to have here, and it's a good relationship between the two characters. Red Bee spends the time in this issue pretty much teaching Peacemaker the value of sacrifice and thinking rather than acting. So there's a few lessons that our John Cena needs to learn here. We're also introduced to quite a few Deathstrokes because, well, the brain did manage to clone Deathstroke, and he's got quite a few of them here. There's a weird issue here with nurture versus nature, as all the Deathstrokes seem to be combat ready as soon as they're born. So when we see Deathstroke babies, things go poorly. And we have Teen Deathstroke here, who's really not wanting to fight. He's really more into chilling, playing video games, and dancing. Not sure why you would clone all your Deathstrokes to only have one eye. I don't know if there's an actual reason for that, or it's just comedic timing. In any case, it works really well here when we are faced with a few Deathstrokes. Finally, Brain actually got the body he wanted, so he tried to change his name into Warmaker. So he's evil to the core, he's got a perfect body, is the final step in evolution. He is actually rather old and apparently made a bunch of weapons for the Third Reich back in the days, but we don't get much more out of this here. There doesn't really need to be more to this character, as it is more or less a throwaway, like probably everything in this particular comic. Our story begins right after Snowflame has been defeated, as Peacemaker and Red Bee get ready to go to Brain's Island. Johnny Blackbird wants to come with them, but since he mistakes a 3 for Peacemaker, and he's trying to bring quite a bit of weapons, including explosives, things could end up very poorly. Peacemaker and Red Bee kind of talk him down of it, while the Red Bee does say that, well, he does have an eternal hero spirit, but his body can't follow, which is a sad fact of life. Johnny will stay there and be their escape pilot, and the two heroes start infiltrating the Brain's base. They try to go through an aeration vent. Peacemaker tries to force it open, doesn't quite work, while Red Bee just spins it open, which is a symbol of the entire life in the difference between the two characters. And Red Bee realizes that Peacemaker never had the basic talk with his father, things like birds and the bees, and things like the value of sacrifice as a hero, etc. But he does seem to see Peacemaker as a hero throughout this ordeal. So, kind of interesting there. They do find a huge amount of cloned henchmen, and Peacemaker is really happy because that means that he can just, kill a whole bunch of henchmen without much repercussions. But as soon as he jumps out of the aeration shaft, the former body of the Brain that's been cloned multiple times basically tell him that, the Brain's over that way. Be careful about Deathstroke. And we want to get out of here because we don't want to live our lives as clones of an evil mastermind in a bit of an interesting situation there. Having survived that ordeal, our heroes go through a nursery where we see a massive amount of Deathstroke babies. I mean, probably in the 50s at least, if we look at the Roman numerals on there. But unfortunately, Peacemaker wakes the babies up, and we are given one of the greatest panels in comic book history with the massive fight between our two heroes and a mass of babies. Peacemaker does explain that they're lucky to have only fought Deathstroke babies because that's probably the biggest they'd be able to fight. But unfortunately, they end up meeting with teenage Deathstroke. The fight goes really poorly for Peacemaker, as teenage Deathstroke is far more powerful than he is. But Peacemaker manages to talk him down by explaining that teenage Deathstroke should be his own man, that his father doesn't own him, and that his father shouldn't be forcing him to do things he doesn't want to do. You know, all things that Peacemaker would love to hear when he was a kid. After this next ordeal, our heroes enter what appears to be a World War II weapons museum by a Third Reich enjoyer, and Peacemaker finally rescues Bruce Wayne, the dog, obviously. And he's really happy to find his dog. Not sure why the brain kept him in a cage with a muzzle, but hey, there's that. And the Red Bee has a bit of a horrible flashback as he sees the Death Wheel in the Doom Wheel in action and in the museum. At this point, we're introduced to the Brain's new form, Warmaker, as he has implanted his brain in a Deathstroke body. Red Bee challenges him to a fight, even though Peacemaker would have been perfectly okay just leaving with his dog and letting things go. Of course, Red Bee has a bit of a history now with the Brain, as he realizes that the Brain is the one that made all those World War II super weapons. And the fight goes really poorly. Obviously, we're talking about Deathstroke here, with the smartest man in the world in control. Peacemaker being manhandled, well, gorilla-handled by Mala. Things go fairly poorly. Peacemaker does save Red Bee using his helmet's laser beam, but things still look very grim. It's at this point that our real hero, Michael the Bee, decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, which is a thing that Red Bee had insinuated to Peacemaker at the start of the book, about the value of sacrifice and why bees are some of the more heroic animals. He literally jumps onto the Brain's eye and pokes the eye out. Right after this happens, the Brain's like, "Oh no, I'll have to get myself a new body. This really sucks." But Red Bee takes his hat off. Yeah, we'll go with that. Takes the hat off. Warmaker, our intrepid dog, grabs the Brain and uses it as a chew toy for a little while, and Mr. Mala's really, really angry about that, and grabs the Brain and sticks him into chemo, which is the last shot of the book. While we do still have a lot of comedy in this, especially with the dialogue and some of the physical things going on, fighting babies, this particular volume is a lot more dramatic than the previous book, and does have a very nice bunch of action, which is entertaining as well. I'm really happy with how this book came out. The cover I got for this particular volume is the one with the Deathstroke babies. They don't have the beard and the tuft of hair in the book itself. Those would be 3 months old, maybe 4 months old. They're able to move around, so a little bit older than the ones we see in the book. But it's still an hilarious concept. It ties in with what we have in the book. It truly attracts the eye. It's very, very strong here. Not a huge fan of the coloring. It is very, very orange, which is a common trend in this entire book, and it does tie in with Deathstroke colors. Kind of works. But it's about the only thing I can say that's weak about this cover. We've got the strong branding. We've got everything that works for that particular series up till now. Opposite to all the regular DC floppies, this is a black label, so they keep the quality up. We've got a card stock cover for pretty much everything. We've got gloss pages. This should really be the baseline for all mainstream comics, but we know it's not going to happen unless everybody starts repeating it again, and talking about it again, and maybe one day it'll get into DC and Marvel and Image's take eds. I do enjoy that the cover has no ads on them, either on the front flap, the back flap, or the back cover. It's just story-related material, the names of the authors and artists, everybody that worked on the book. I don't mind ads, you know me, but this does make this book actually look far more professional than a lot of the regular DC fare. The ad placement in this one is kinda sucks, however. It's a little bit all over the place. It kind of breaks your reading pace. Editors should probably have done a better job with the placement of those ads. Or maybe they shouldn't, because if the editor starts paying attention, maybe those actually good books will stop being good because the editors are the one breaking them most of the time. Maybe it's a trade-off. We get so many Batman ads in this. We get Deadly Duo, which I've heard is actually quite good, but I don't care. Got Gotham Wars, which I've heard is quite bad, and I don't care. And we've got Gargoyles of Gotham, and I don't care. We've got DC Deceased that's restarting because I guess Halloween's around and they didn't think that putting Night Terror there would have been smarter. And I don't care. That's where I'm at with Batman now, unfortunately. And you can see all new vision from Eisner winning. Everybody won an Eisner. Let's just stop it with that. It's not worth saying Eisner winning. Everybody's won one at this point, I guess, except the people who are actually good at their jobs. We get a Blue Beetle ad, but it's for the actual comic, which is supposed to start in September. My care meter for that is also at an all-time low. I look at the art on this, and I am not impressed. And it sounds like it's an event, the Scarab Wars, because you can't have just, a character doing character things. Honestly, we don't need more events, DC. You've got already way too many of them. And we've got an ad for the DC webtoon Vixen NYC, a book that will suck so hard it will scissor. I can't be excited by this at all. I know they're really trying to pimp their webtoon stuff, but I don't care about webtoons. I want comics. And webtoons, for every good webtoon out there, there's a million bad ones. They're basically webcomics at this point. I'm not interested in DC putting their hand into that, especially with characters like Vixen that they've assassinated. We do get a good chunk of new characters here that are introduced, but all of them work really well for the time we see them. The very basic original Brain clone, Teen Deathstroke, Baby Deathstroke, Warmaker. None of them are really iconic or will change the game, but they do what they need to do in this particular book really well, and it wouldn't be difficult to see them being reused in other things in the future. Teen Deathstroke is really the best of the lot. He has all the suave swagger of a former Vietnam veteran. This is the kind of dumb character you introduce here and could be one of those staple of silly Peacemaker stories. Have him survive the next issue. He'll probably die, I know, but have him survive the next issue. He starts crashing at Peacemaker Place. Chris becomes his surrogate dad. Red Bee becomes the surrogate granddad. They keep having dumb adventures all together where they have to rescue dogs, rescue cats, and end up fighting supervillains. It would be great. 3 generations of Supermen doing crazy things. Honestly, that's probably better than anything DC has planned, but we can dream. The Brain's original clone, they're all perfectly average, and it's hilarious and explains why the Brain really wants the body of Deathstroke, not only because his original body is rejecting the old Brain, but we also learn that he is a Third Reich enjoyer. In his body, if you look at it, I don't think it would pass Gable's tests. The fighting baby scene, really, probably one of the greatest panel of all time. I'd love to have it in color and not in orange, but that's been a standard thing throughout this comic. It also reminds me of a great statue that, if I remember well, is in Norway. So a great scene overall. The action scenes themselves are also really good. They do have some impact. They're not very long, and they're there to supplement the comedic aspects. I would like them to be in full color, but this orange coloring has been used since issue 1. It's well drawn anyways. I'm not sure who decided to go with this kind of palette for the action scenes, but in my opinion, it's been working the last couple issues. It still works now. I really love the old World War II super weapons. I know they exist in DC, but those are the things you would see in old magazines, old pulp serials, all of those things with the crazy idea of those Germans and of the evil Japanese and all those things we used to see in the 40s and the early 50s. It's really nicely done here, and I really like the look on Peacemaker's face there as he rescues the dog. It is heartwarming, which is weird for a character like Peacemaker. War Maker's design, bit of a throwaway. It does look like a fancy version of Deathstroke. That's probably one of the weaker bits. I would have thought maybe you would have used the Brain's coloring scheme rather than Deathstroke's coloring scheme. It's okay. I mean, it's really throwaway. He's there for a couple pages and gets his head chopped off. So it's not terrible. Chemo does look fantastic here at the end, and it sets up the ending of the book and the series to be really big. I honestly have a hard time waiting for the next issue here to know what's gonna happen. There are quite a few story elements in this particular book, and we've already discussed some of them, like the value of sacrifice, what makes a hero, and every man should be a man. They were completely built into the story, and they had not really any subtleties to them, but it worked really well. There are some things that are just a little bit more subtle, or things that we can view here as things that Peacemaker needs to learn, and that he seems to be learning through this story. The first one is really that he keeps using brute force when using his brain and using the force of your opponent would work better in many cases. The Red Bee is really an example of that fighting style compared to outpowering your enemy like Peacemaker. Red Bee is basically acting like the grandfather Peacemaker never got. And it kind of makes me sad that he'll probably disappear from DC for a foreseeable future again. This is probably his one time to shine before we get back the Red Bee that's his daughter or his granddaughter or whatever, because that's all DC really does. But honestly, he is a great character, and he works really well with the characters like Peacemaker. You could use him with Deadshot. You could use him with Deathstroke as well as a counterbalance to the either evil character or character that needs to learn a lesson. It's actually great to see that Peacemaker actually acknowledges that fighting Deathstroke is a bad idea. In issue 2, he was probably happy to have to get to fight Deathstroke and fight large groups of enemy. Here, he's happy to get his dog back, and that's all he really cares about. Peacemaker is genuinely happy to find his dog, even though he had him for maybe 2 hours if we're lucky. And it's great that the person actually escalating the fight and the mess with War Maker, or Brian, is not our hero, but the Red Bee. Because learning that the Brain is a Third Reich enjoyer, well, some people might know about it, but I wasn't aware of that. It wasn't really built into anything in the Doom Patrol that I've read with Brain. We have an actual hatred from Red Bee towards the Brain, which goes against the character of Richard for most of the story already, where he was just going with the flow. We do have Chekhov's gun paying off once again. The previous issue it was with a frog, and this issue it's with a bee. Peacemaker gets explained that bees have a full understanding of sacrifice, and Michael, the best bee in the world, blinds War Maker and allows Red Bee to defeat him through the ultimate sacrifice. Of course, we also add another line from the Red Bee saying that bees, if they really want to kill something, they surround the animal they want to kill and overeats it to death. That's something I have a feeling will be paying off in next issue when they're fighting Chemo. So our previous issue was a massive comedy piece. Here we get some comedy, fairly well established with the dialogue and some of the situations. but we get a lot of characterization and drama. So it goes on and off, and it gives us a good understanding of where we're going. The first part of this comic is really, what does it mean to be a hero, and how long can you keep doing it, especially if you're ready to sacrifice things for it. We're introduced to the clones, showing how much Brian has been working on the different things over time and trying to get an actual body. We see that he's done it with his own body, he's done it with Deathstroke at all sorts of levels. So it could be very threatening. And we do have a nice big fight with the big bad evil guy at the end, with a side of extra evil with Monsieur Malat. And everything pays off the Red Beast story. So this is pretty much as good of a pacing as you get. I have a bad feeling about how this series will end, and I'm getting mad about it already. I have a feeling a lot of people will die, and it'll be really sad. Or even worse, it might end on a positive note that will never be followed up by DC, and I don't know which one I'm sadder about. Like I said, I just pitched a random idea during the run of this video, and it would be hilarious, something you can do multiple miniseries about, you can do an ongoing about, with 3 generations of characters doing stuff. You could even introduce Red Beast's daughter that's, let's say she starts hitting on Peacemaker rather than Peacemaker hitting on her, just to have an extra level of crazy. There's all sorts of things you could do with Peacemaker, Red Bee, and Teenage Deathstroke. Let's find him a real name, but that would be a great team up. This is what American comics should try to be more. Self-contained. I mean, it's a 6-issue series, and you don't need to have external events. It doesn't set up a million different things. It's just a story about Peacemaker trying to get his dog back. It's fun. It has a fixed ending. This is what all those miniseries should really be about, and what even the ongoing series should be built around, rather than being built around events. Honestly, when the trade paperback for this comes out, if you haven't gotten the series in floppies, I would jump on it. This is really, really worth it. This is probably one of the best mainstream comic out there at the moment. And it's also better than most mature comedy indie comics you have out there. And even better than some of the standard indies you've got out there. Because, let's face it, not everyone's as creative as they think they are. So I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day. Remember to subscribe, like the video, ring the bell, all that good jazz. I will be seeing you later. Keep on reading comics. Keep on enjoying them. I'll keep reviewing them and analyzing them. And I'll see you later. Bye-bye.